My name is Fred Cook, and I drive school bus.
My name is Leanne Murchie, and I'm a school bus driver for TCAPS. It's been a very wonderful experience.
When I first hired in, one of the previous bus drivers told me that this particular job, driving school bus, is the best job on earth. So I immediately took to it, and I have to agree that this is one of the best jobs that anyone can do.
What prompted me in the very beginning, I have a college degree, and she said, "You're in the safest vehicle in the world on the road." So I thought, well, I'm gonna try. Because I would be on the same time schedule as my own children. And when they were off, I was off. When holidays, I was there. So it was the best of both worlds. TCAPS offers jobs elsewhere within the system.
Between routes, I used to, for 12, 13 years, I did lunch duty over at East Middle School, and now I paint.
They're real good about finding people the hours that they need during the course of the day to make the job great. We have Mesa Insurance. The whole district has it. It's awesome. It's the best health insurance. We offer a 401k. There's a sign-on bonus. It's a win-win situation.
The most important thing, I think, coming to work at TCAPS is you understand that you are a part of a team. It's a part of a collective. It's not just bus drivers and then versus teachers. It's not that. We all are in this thing called education together.
If a person likes kids, generally likes kids, this is a perfect job.
So I'm talking to kids all day, and that experience is really heartwarming.
We would like to welcome the audience and thank you for attending. Viewers may watch the Board of Education meetings and board committee meetings live on TV 190 or online at tcaps.net/board. Recorded meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. Doesn't look like we have any public comment.
No public comment.
So we'll move right along. We're now at the draft committee meeting minutes of May 30th, 2023. Do we have any corrections or updates?
None here.
Okay, so they will stand as posted. Now we're on to 2022-23 TCAPS District Course Catalog updates, of which there are none.
There are none, but you will see a lot next meeting.
Okay. Thanks for the heads up. Moving on to informational items, we are at the cell phone Board Policy 5136 review. I'd like to defer to Kristen Kwiatkowski.
Yes, so thank you. Our current cell phone policy 5136 is on the screen. Our last revision was in March of 2011. So at the board's request, we have put together some information on policy, current practices, research on the topic, really just some kind of restriction and ban information of our peer comparison districts that we use for student achievement results across, so similar enrollment and demographics. And then just some challenges and time for Q&A at the end of that. We've got our secondary high school principals here, and the other two middle school principals have also weighed into the slide, so they've put down their perspective. So just going back to this slide. So this is our current policy, and at a recommendation, if just changing the verbiage in this was the recommendation in yellow that the secondary principals recommended. So instead of it saying that communication devices were prohibited while in the classroom or engaged in a learning environment such as field trip or assembly, it was just during instructional hours, was a recommendation from secondary principals, along with upon request, students are expected to turn in their phones over to staff when asked. Sometimes that is a challenge, and I don't know if you guys want to weigh in on either one of those.
Well, on the second part about turning phones over when requested, I think the middle school, did the middle schools do the envelope too?
Yeah,
Yes.
East Middle School does. I don't know about West. Yeah.
So what we started doing at the high school a number of years ago, ideas teachers came up with, they always have great practical ideas for implementing some of these things. We just have cell phone envelopes, so we talk a lot at the beginning of the year about what the expectations are around phones, and then when a student's not in. alignment with that, you just hand them an envelope. They're supposed to write on the envelope what's going on and write their name and put the phone in there themselves, and put it in the bin. They pick it up from the office at the end of the day. But it keeps staff from having to like handle kids' phones and get into like whatever, you know, wormholes that leads to. You know, it eliminates any questions about like if anybody was looking at their phone while they didn't have it during the day or anything like that. It's in an envelope that you sealed, and it's still sealed when you get it back at the end of the day. And that seems to like take care of a lot of the power struggle stuff about a student turning over their phone. It also doesn't put staff in a situation where they need to go grab a phone from a kid, because that's always going to lead to another thing and another thing, and then that becomes the issue we're talking about, and not the phone being a distraction.
And I would say too, it also protects the kid's dignity, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they're humans and they make mistakes. We all do, right? And 99% of our kids, like, oh, my phone went off and I just went to check it. Oh, I shouldn't have it out. You slide the envelope, and it's so, there's no even verbal cue. Other kids don't know about it. The kid can put it in there. Oh, I made a mistake. I'll get it back at the end of the day, and we all move forward, right? It kind of does both sides of that. And our good kids make mistakes. Everybody does. So it allows for that. And then we track those as offices, right? How often has Joe's phone been collected, right? And that could trigger a meeting with Joe or with Joe and his parents if we see that, gosh, it's been 8 times in 2 weeks that we've had that, so.
Can you break that down a little more? Where does the student already have the envelope? Does every classroom have?
No, so like every classroom has like a little bin that just stays on the teacher's desk, and it's got the envelopes in them. And like the way, I think it's similar there. Well, they're supposed to have them in the pockets there, but at West, the way it works is like if a student puts their phone in the envelope, there's also like a little magnet that's in the bin, and the teacher just, as they get a chance during the lesson, they put it on the little frame outside of their door. And there's one time in the morning and then one time in the afternoon, security staff walk around. So if they see the magnet, they'll come pick up the phones and they put them in the main office. We used to do them in the wing offices because we were worried about the quantity of them, but it honestly isn't very
Been
much,
that much.
you know, after the first couple weeks of school, kind of training kids on the expectation. I mean, an average day is probably like 6 phones from 1,500 kids across 6 class periods, so.
I would say, yeah, and so we all just have the envelopes, like I even carry them with me. If I'm in a classroom doing an observation and I see a kid with a phone, I don't have to interrupt the instruction or make a big deal. I can just slide the envelope on their desk. It's nondescript. The kid puts the phone in there. On the front, they put their name and their grade. Ours go to our wing offices because just how Central's laid out, the main office makes like 0 sense to.
Yeah, kids have to walk
students.
by it to
Yeah,
leave West
yeah.
for us.
And then we have added that if a student's phone gets turned over during 6th hour, because that's kind of been a rub with some of our teachers, like, wait a minute, like, he had it out during 6th hour, he loses it for 20 minutes. Then that next day, he or she has to check their phone into their wing office, and they lose their access for the whole day. And that's kind of helped even curb sort of that end of the day usage or uptick we used to see. I don't know if you guys do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Similar to with the kids that leave midday. The other nice thing about a policy like that, because like any time you talk about a policy like this, at the middle school or the high school level, you want to make sure it's something you can do consistently, right? You know, and that you have enough staff to enforce it. So the nice thing about the way it is currently is like we put that in the packets we give to guest teachers too. So you don't get this situation where it's like, oh, there's a sub today, everybody's just on their phones the whole time. You know, so especially like our building subs that are there every day, they understand like this is the system and this is the envelope thing. They don't have to like explain it to the student when they go up and talk to them. It should just be like a consistent expectation.
So, oh, go ahead. Did you?
Okay, I was reading a bunch of policies though where they call for the phone to be away for the full day, which means leave it at home as an encouraged policy. With the possible, you know, some exceptions may very well have to be made, but those would be made ahead of time. Keeping the phone away from the day means you don't even have to worry about somebody pulling it out during the day, you know. It seems to me that if you already have given people Chromebooks with appropriate software on them, what use would you have for your secondary devices that actually fit into what's supposed to be going on during the school day? Just a question.
You know, go ahead, Joe. No, I was just gonna say, Beth, those policies you were reading, were they K through 12 or just high school or middle school? Did it?
Some of them, I think, were a combination. And some of the policies I've heard about, I haven't read. I think I mentioned at one point that Massachusetts is talking about a statewide policy on cell phones, that they think that it's just a little bit too difficult to corral them. And the biggest concern that I'm hearing from teachers, not that I've talked to a lot of TCAPS teachers, has been they don't want to be the policeman on it. And I 100% understand that.
Right. I've heard that too. I wonder, just the practicality of a kid leaving it, especially a high school age student, leaving it at home all day long, then having to leave from school and go to work. And then they don't have their cell phone with them, they don't have time to run home to get it. While I am definitely for some kind of something on this issue, I'm wondering if, different levels. At the elementary school, there's a policy. At the middle school, there's another one. At the high school, if what you guys have is working and the teachers, I've also heard too that some teachers will let kids have them out. So it's an inconsistent.
Yeah, we're pretty, we pretty, at Central at least, we do have the kids check them in into pockets. And then at first we were like, well, our leadership team came up with a system and we're gonna onboard teachers. And they said, we'll let everyone make a choice. And then we got about partway through first semester and they're like, nah, we all gotta do it the same way. We all have to do it the same way or else it becomes exactly what you just said. And then it becomes, oh, Mrs. Houghton is way nicer than Mr. Esper
Right.
because she lets us have, and then
Yeah, of
we all know that's true, but,
Yeah.
and then it becomes a battle, right, for our staff, right? And my staff said, they were like, no, we all want to be in this together. The reality and what our parents talked about the other night is the truth. These are devices that are like programmed and made to be addictive, and they are to kids, right? And so we even went as far as our photo classes used to use them for pictures, and my photo teacher says it's so hard because kids mean the best intention. They grab it out just to take photos, but then I look over and they're 20 minutes down a wormhole in Snapchat, right? It's just, they just don't have that self-control. So we bought some more cameras for the classroom and they use old school cameras and upload the photos that way and edit them that way. And it's eliminated the distractions from learning and what you're supposed to be doing.
What do you think of saying to the elementary and junior high kids, home with the phone? But then by the time you get to high school, into your locker, unless there's a good reason? And during
So-
instruction.
I have a couple of comments too, but I want to hear what Joe, I think one of you had to say to the question you originally had.
Yeah, thanks. On Beth's original question. So, like I think you're kind of getting there where like the different levels, elementary, middle school, high school, things kids need to do at that age and things parents expect them to do probably differ, right? And it might be a matter of defining and getting some agreement with school staff at all those levels, like the spaces in which we don't want to see or hear phones. The phrase we've used at the high school level for a number of years now is like, phones should not be seen or heard in the classroom. So it doesn't matter if it's before the bell rang or something, like if you walk in that threshold to the door, don't want to see it, don't want to hear it, okay? I know Kristen has feedback from the middle school principals. I think they're probably in favor of like adding cafeterias and things like that for kids at that age. At the high school level, it's probably different than the other two. Kids range quite a bit in high school. We have a lot of kids that they come to school, they don't get home till after 10 o'clock at night. They're communicating with parents they should never be communicating with them during class. But understand right now, a high school kid in the 5 minutes between class can get on their phone and return their messages. They can make a call at lunch. They can do any of those things. They can do a lot of bad things with their phone too, but there's a lot of legitimate communication that they do. A good number of our students work. Bosses are asking if they can cover a shift for people like that. I think it's unrealistic at the high school level if we ask them not to come to school with a phone, or to come to school and put it in like a locker or a lockbox or something like that for the day. It's pretty similar at both high schools. Currently, like we can't get students very interested in using lockers, you know? We would have to do a lot of like structural work to try to change that paradigm. I mean, currently we assign a couple hundred lockers on a 1,500 kids. I don't know, is that pretty similar at Central? Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say too, keep in mind, you know, our juniors and seniors, I bet we have about, I'd have to pull parking permits, but we have well over 400 students who drive too, right? So some of it is kids wanting, their parents want them, hey, it's snowy day, will you text me when you get to school, right? So there is some of that. Dual enrollment students, we have over 200 kids who go to CTC in the middle of the day. So, and there's just some flexibility. It's just not quite as rigid as the K-8 setting. So this idea of away in the classroom, we feel like our teachers, if we give them the tools that we're all consistent about how that happens and we teach our kids why that's important, we can as administrators monitor that pretty well. And we do look for like, if there's one teacher who continually, we get phones from their room, we go and offer support, right? So what are some maybe avenues that we can help you with? How are other teachers doing this successfully? Why is it important that we all commit to this as a staff for our kids, you know? And we can look for that.
And I have just a few comments, because I have kids that are in school and have been going through West. One's graduated, one's in, and one's going in. And so I brought the idea of the school policy to them and told them I was fully in support, actually. They were sort of like, But some of the feedback I got was, well, Mom, how do I get in touch with you when it's time to leave? Which was valid, because we do that a lot. You know, I pick up my kids from school and drop them off every day, and from CTC. And, you know, we do this crazy driving schedule, which I probably couldn't do if I was having to contact the office all the time. Second of all, I do know that kids, and they all told me this, is that kids find ways of looking at it in class all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that's a concern for me, because I know that the teachers aren't always aware of that, and they can't always be aware of that. It's just impossible to monitor. You know, if a kid's sitting there pretending like he's looking at something and the phone's right here, you know, they're like, it happens constantly. So that's one situation that I would love to, you know, have some more exploratory discussion on, you know.
And that's why we
how do
went
we
to
do that?
the
Do we have
pocket
them,
system,
or do we have them place it on the, you know, on the desk at the beginning of class, you know, for the teacher, like everybody's goes on there. So I don't know, my daughter's younger school, who, you know, goes through 8th grade, they had to drop them off in the office at the beginning of the school day. And if something was happening that they needed to be in contact with a parent about, they had to go to the office. So, you know, it worked pretty well, but they're younger too, so.
What school?
That was Pathfinder.
I'm saying,
So
okay,
they've
so
tried
that
it all
would be a
kinds of
nightmare
ways.
for 1,100 students.
Yeah, it's a smaller school, and, you know, and they've tried different ways of doing it too, so not all of it works for everybody.
Right. Jesse, is that at the beginning of every class that they put their phone in a pocket?
Yep, every classroom has the same pockets. We bought them for everybody. They'll kind of look like a shoe holder, right? And the teachers have a number system. Every student knows what their number is. I asked some of my kids, like some of our students, like, hey, like, does it matter that your number changes in each hour? They're like, no, the list is right there. I'm 3 in this hour, but 4 in that hour, and 5 in that hour. It's not hard. They take attendance now that way, and they'll notice if a kid says they don't have a phone, they'll email a wing principal, hey, can you just check in with so-and-so? They haven't turned a phone, they don't tell me they have one, is that right? We also have some kids who have multiple devices, so we do a little bit of chasing of that down. We were having more trouble with kids having it in their pocket and going to the bathroom and then accessing it, and then that caused them to be out of the classroom for 20 minutes, or to meet up, or to be engaged in activities that were not supportive of where we need them to go. So we just kind of went with pretty much every kid has a phone. You need to turn them in here, and that's the system that we used, and we found that the more consistent we've been. Every classroom has it. This is the way we all rolled. The kids learn it.
I would volunteer my own kid as being guilty of that, you know, because I know that they've done it, you know, and so.
On average, on an average week, what disciplines are you dealing with phones?
Oh, it ranges from social media posts, right? That's probably the biggest one we see with kids making fun of each other, with kids posting things about each other. And then, of course, that just creates drama in the setting, right? Kids are posting so-and-so things about each other. We've had kids tape each other. We've had kids tape staff.
Tape fights.
Tape fights. We've had kids plan to meet each other to either vape or fight or videotape fights or videotape inappropriate behavior to then push out and continue to share.
A key
Yeah.
point with that, though, to know is that if it happens outside of school, to the Supreme Court, there's nothing we can do about it disciplinary.
Right.
We've had that, we just had a situation at West, that's the case.
Even if they're planning it during school hours, if it happens,
If it's posted and done outside of the school day, we cannot discipline based off of it.
Yeah, if it's about like, I'm gonna get you at school or something like that, that makes a clear link, that's one thing, but I would agree, like, you know, the things we see in school, like, not even like real fights all the time, but kids that are just gonna go horse around, like in the locker room or the bathrooms, they take phones, they videotape it. But a lot more of like the social media harassment, kids are starting to get the picture, and they do it outside of the school day, you know, which doesn't mean we still can't have a conversation with that kid, make their parents aware, which they're rarely ever aware, and they're usually grateful to know their kids are doing those kind of things. But yeah, they don't come into like the school discipline realm necessarily.
And I would say we have both investigated some situations of students sending images of themselves to boyfriend, girlfriend, and then that person sharing those out. So now we're talking about distribution of pornography, could be child pornography depending on the age of the student. And kids actually can get themselves in some pretty big trouble pretty fast without even realizing it, especially some of our kids who are 14 and sharing photos like that. And again, Joe's correct. A lot of times we call parents and let them know, you know, parents are ashamed, they're embarrassed, but also they have no idea, and they don't know how to control this, you know, so.
and so the majority of the time when that goes on, when the social media harassment is going on, is that between classes, at lunch, when they have access to their phones? I mean, obviously, they can't do it if it's in a pocket, but since they haven't during class changes and at lunch,
I would say since we changed and made our kids all turn their phones in at the beginning of every hour, the access to bathrooms, as far as like some kids being out 20, 30, 40 minutes went way down. That like during school, snapping each other and having all that went way down. It still happens during lunch. It happens a lot outside of school, right? Like we will get calls that, hey, this kid on Saturday night sent this to my kid. Can you make them stop? You know, those types of things. But since we have really been like, you have to turn them over at the beginning of every hour, it definitely, those issues have decreased.
and just to be, so that everyone knows, if the student leaves the classroom to go to the restroom during class, they don't get to take their phone with them.
No, we both have signs in our locker rooms that are clearly, you know, no cell phones allowed, and that's more of we want to protect kids' privacy, right? You don't want a cell phone. You go into the YMCA, they're very similar, the signs that we have up to like what you'd see at the YMCA, right? It's a place where kids change.
And the hall pass system uses their Chromebook?
The hall pass system uses their Chromebook, yeah.
So while,
Oh, go ahead. No,
I was
we've
just
been
gonna
waiting to
kind of.
talk.
I want to see what the
Yeah,
middle school.
So while our policy allows for cell phones and other electronic devices on school property, in school and on buses, this is what's the current practice is. So I do think there's some room for us to tighten up some of the practices across the district. I think we're all, the expectation that cell phones are away during instructional hours was across the board in all of our secondary buildings. But again, I think just some of those daily practices, like, you know, the example of Jesse saying, hey, maybe we should have every kid, instead of it just saying, put it away, that it's actually in a sleeve across the board at middle and high school. So that could be a possibility. And they did describe the bottom, the envelope system already. The current realities, if we were to go to a no cell phone policy, and again, these are coming from secondary principals, we obviously reduce the risk of students really making mistakes, like trying to record videos of fights and others to use to shame students on social media, which does happen. The videotaping of teachers or staff later to shame as well without permission. And that students are accessing appropriate online content that is TCAPS approved through our secure system. Just some research and the impact on learning that we discovered, and some of this is from the Away for the Day website that had some research on it, different links, and some of the information that was shared at the last board meeting. So in England, there was a ban on mobile phones. Test scores for 16-year-olds increased by 6.4%, which had twice the impact on students that were at risk. The other one was around U.S. policies on cell phones in the United States in middle and high schools, that 85% of schools do not restrict phones during lunch or recess. But of the 16% of middle schools and 25% of high schools, they do not restrict cell phones in classrooms. That's across the United States, recent policy or recent research on the impact of learning. Just a couple other ones on multitasking and texting in terms of impact on grades and grade point averages. There's a couple different examples. I'll give you a minute just to glance over those.
The last one is my life.
Yeah, there's a reason they don't want you to text while you drive. I can't remember what it
Yeah.
is, though.
Right? And then there's already discussion around social media, just the neurological development, the brain that's happening, and really just social media, not being inherently good or bad, but the way in which students are using it, as you've already heard today, does impact the day, does impact their jobs, does impact their assistant principals' jobs, teachers, and really a lot of, there's been I guess a lot of the discipline hearings that I also am the discipline hearing in for the district, there's components of social media usage as well that happen outside of school that sometimes end up in school, or kids that, again, are videotaping fights or had pre-planned ideas about a fight. So it's a thing for sure. This is a comparison of the districts, including Forest Hills was not one of them, but that was a district that we have been looking at in terms of districts that have cell phone restrictions or bans. So these are the districts that we typically see as when Heidi will present on our student achievement data that we look in comparison. Most of them, other than Clarkston, actually all of them other than Clarkston, have some restriction or ban at the middle or high school level, and they are varied. Some of the policies and practices were tiered by elementary, middle, and high school. Some were an encouragement to leave home, like you'll see Farmington there. And then again, depending on whether there's lockers or some were simply restricted to prohibited in bathrooms, locker rooms, and offices. Some were asked to be powered down and out of sight. So there's a large variance in terms of the actual restriction or ban. But like I said, these were all districts that we typically compare ourselves with student achievement. I'll pause there for just a second.
Does the board have these slides yet?
They do.
Okay, just want to make sure. I saw you taking photos.
Yeah,
right?
you don't think? Yeah, you should have, yep.
Yeah, so you have the
I'll have
slides.
to go dig
Yep.
them again to see if I've got them
Yes.
there. I didn't see them when I looked, but I haven't looked every single day.
They were shared on Friday.
It's in the email that
Share-
Stacy
they're always
sent.
shared
There's
Friday.
There's like a little link to it inside the
Okay.
list she gave us.
On the
of
email
meetings.
that
Can't
Megan
find it,
sent?
email
Yep.
us, Megan, and she'll resend it to you.
So again, and then some of these are, limited. You've got passing time limited or lunchtime, or they can only be used, before and after school. So again, extremely varied. I did make a phone call to Forest Hills, which seems to be probably the most comprehensive of in terms of tiered approach, and left a message for Thursday. Have not heard back. I'm assuming he's on vacation. I haven't heard back from him yet, of the administrator. I wanted to get the administrator perspective of what it was like to, how much time in advance was this? What did they communicate to their families? Feedback from families, et cetera. So I did ask principals for some challenges that they saw with just a review of the policy in the summertime. One of them was timing. Fast tracking this felt like we could create further challenges for teachers and administrators in terms of implementing this policy too quickly. Opportunities to actually teach the expectations to students. So one of the suggestions actually from the middle school ranks was, you know, if we're gonna consider this, could there be maybe a phase-in even with like sixth grade, incoming sixth graders and starting it there and then phasing it over a couple of years, one of the suggestions. The fact that we've just kind of implemented and realigned our student parent handbook, so we would need to go back and address areas that were related to cell phone use if there was a restriction or a change in the policy. I think the other part was just opportunity for families to give feedback. We had obviously feedback from a few families, right, that came to the board open hours, but their stance was we really haven't done a comprehensive ask of families and to see, you know, where are they on this topic. Also, just from teachers and administrators on the implementation, you know, we're hearing from high school principals, there would be some challenges in implementing a change where we would be away for the day, and obviously there would be a lot of conversation about when would we allow them if we were to completely have them away for the day in both buildings. And then really just the limited opportunities over the summer to, if we're making changes and we have to implement these, like all the questions that families may have about their students. I mean, we have elementary students. I talked to some elementary principals in this conversation as well, and they said they have students as young as kindergarten with Apple Watches.
Yeah.
So, you know, are we gonna allow watches? Is it no device? Is it just cell phone? So just, there's just a lot of layers to discuss and figure out with the implementation part of this in terms of, you know, giving our administrators the guidelines they need to actually implement the policy if there was to be a change.
And there's another component. Some kids don't have cell phones. And there's sort of like another kind of pushback stigma on that as well, you know.
And some food for thought. While we're considering all this stuff, is the thought that some parents might be willing to sign something that says, I want my kid to turn in their phone every day before class and come and pick it up. Like kind of taking the heat off of you all, but it would have to be stored somewhere.
We do have some parents who have, because of situations with their students, whether that's situations in our building or situations outside of it, who have said to us, our kid will turn their phone in every day to you. So I would say we have about maybe 6 to 10 kids, depending on the time of the year, who check in their phone every day with their wing office.
Out of 1,400.
Right, and we can manage that, right? Yeah, but, yeah.
But
Yeah,
if a
300
bunch
a
of
day.
parents decided to do that, well, how would that be a nightmare for you guys?
Mostly, I think if parents like wanted that,
Yeah.
then we would encourage them to take your kid's phone when
Phone
they get
before
out of
you
the
get to
car.
school.
Don't send them to school with the phone, because I don't think you know, you're not talking about Jesse and I, you're talking about like our wing administrative assistants.
Right.
Or security staff tracking down hundreds of kids every day, that likely don't want to give up their phone, right? And searching it out and everything else. Yeah, and kids have come up with a lot of tricks, like Jesse said, the kid who brings the extra phone, you know, the dead phone that doesn't work anymore from home. They call them drop phones, you know, and they bring those and it's like, oh no, here's my phone.
So smart.
You know?
Clever.
It wasn't Jake, was it?
Yeah.
We've had a few kids that have maybe 5 or 6 phones in their bags for different situations.
That sounds more like entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And then you have to keep in
Creative.
mind too, when we think with high school kids and all kids too, some of our kids are in 2 different households, right? So they ride their bus to school and they're riding home a different bus to go to a different household. So I just think there's some other variables we need to think about with some of our kids too for that.
Would you say there's ever times that as educators, we're utilizing phones related to curriculum?
I was thinking about that and I was gonna ask Joe afterwards. The only class that uses their phone for curriculum that has gotten kind of permission is our actually weights and conditioning class, because the kids track everything on this app. All their workouts are there, all their weights are, so they know exactly what they're supposed to be lifting in reps. It's the only class at Central that we allow usage of the phone because of that story about my art teacher who she just couldn't, even the best kids, they get, all of a sudden they just wanna check a couple things and then 20 minutes have gone by and they've done nothing but scrolled, you know? So for us, that's the only class they use it in.
Yeah, and we have a little bit of that. Even that one, the teachers found for us, like, they would go down the same wormhole sometimes. So
yeah.
they got a few iPads, and if the class is small enough, they just have kids enter what they did through the iPad, so they're not using their personal device. but very little. I mean, when we transitioned to it at West, it was like an idea that came from teachers, and it wasn't like unanimous. You know, there were a bunch that said, well, these are tools, and students are going to use them when they're in the world of work and stuff, so let's not take them away, let's teach them how to use them. But the overall consensus became like, we provide them with Chromebooks, they're filtered devices, that gets to everything useful. We need them to get used to, and like, we can't handle the level of distraction that is when a teacher's trying to control that with sometimes 33 kids in a classroom. So we ask people not to use them for instructional purposes. You know, if there's something you want to do in a Chromebook that it can't do, talk to technology. They've been pretty good about like, oh, we can open this up, that kind of thing. And then you're just managing that kind of behavior on a Chromebook, which is not foolproof, by the way. And that's those lots of like considerations and spiderweb things that happen when we talk about changing the practice, which is why we might want to get a little more into the school year and talk about this with staff, is like, you know, we have all kinds of tools in place, but kids get around it and watch YouTube on their Chromebooks. They play games on their Chromebooks. They find ways to download things they shouldn't. And you discover that, you close that back door, and they open something else up, you know? So lots of kind of things to follow there.
Another consideration would also just be what would be the expectation for staff? Are they gonna be
Yes.
out and about?
So that was another thing.
Especially at the high school
We
level.
made the
Right.
commitment that if we were telling our students they had to turn their phone over, that we can't be in a classroom doing an observation and have our phone out. So, or teachers need to model that too. So we had a conversation as adults about that, and we thought, gosh, if we're really gonna say this is important and this is sacred time. So like if I'm in a classroom and, you know, I see my phone goes off, or we have radios anyways, if I need to, I'll step out of the classroom. I will not pull my own device out in front of the kids, because it just seems a little.
I do the same thing,
Okay.
but I do use my phone a lot in the hallways.
I do,
I use it a
yep.
lot in the commons. We encourage, like I use it, and we encourage our security staff to use the little Smart Pass app, because it tells you what kid with their picture should be in the hallway right now and which ones shouldn't. So we have a lot of hallway conversations with kids based on that.
Yeah, and
I think that's the biggest at the high school level. Like anything we ask kids to do, like if we're gonna ask kids, if we ever got to the point where we said we don't want you to use your phone in the commons at the high school level, we don't want you to use your phone in the hallway, then the adults probably shouldn't either. I think it's a little different dynamic when it's elementary kids and elementary teachers, or even maybe middle school, but.
Yeah, our security walks around with the envelope, so like if it's during class time and you're out in the hallway and you have your phone out, you put your phone in an envelope. I mean, like, we go that far too, because those are the kids who are trying to sneak it and have two devices. That's how we find out some of that stuff too, so.
Any other questions, comments? I think this is certainly going to be a big discussion going forward. And nothing to be decided today, but where are we? Do we want to move this to discussion for the next board meeting?
I think so. I mean, you know, we're gonna need some direction from the board if it's special meeting time, you know, to be able to really dig into this. Is it, you know, that we need more time and this is gonna be through the fall? I mean, you know, it's requested by the board and gonna be kind of driven where the board wants to go with this, and so we'll need some direction.
I would sort of like to, and I don't know the logistics of it, invite maybe a couple of times for community sharing, you know, discussion.
We have that though in the summer with all of our public comments. We have that now,
Yeah,
and there's no
but
meeting.
just it's not public comments to the agenda, but to a specific topic. And hopefully a discussion, not just 3-minute public comment. And see how they approach it. I'd also like to maybe more systematically see if the teachers have any other thoughts. Because I don't think any of us want to put them into a disciplinary focus when you're also trying to educate.
Right, no, I can tell you firsthand that, you know, teachers don't want.
No, and
To
you
fight
don't want to
that
waste
battle.
your time. You don't really.
But at the
want-
same point, are you gonna get an accurate picture of that in the next 2 months in the summer when people are on vacations and disengaged and all that?
Well,
Right, and it's out, sorry, go ahead.
No, well, my feeling is if we don't do it by the time of the new school year, it's really going to muddy the water to try and get anything to happen. And what happens is then 1 month goes into the next month, which goes to the next month, which somehow goes into the next month, and it just goes indefinitely. You might get it in a year. And it seems to me, if you're talking about a responsive educational system, that shouldn't be what we would consider was acceptable.
And I think we could, the problem is I don't think you're gonna get the response that you want from parents and staff, and that they're all off for the summer. And, you know, you can have those meetings, but 6 people are gonna probably show up. You know, versus if you can do that in the fall, you'll get a lot more response. That's my
Well,
only
then,
point to what you were
what
saying
we
with
would
that.
do then in the fall is basically see how it's going and have them react to things that are in place.
And that's what I'm just saying, so that, you know, I just want you to recognize with summer that staff aren't here. I mean, they're not teachers, you're not going to get much of a response.
Do these
You know, with
people
that.
not vacation in the vacation land?
They go, but they're not, you know,
They
they're not
definitely
contractual.
unplug.
Yes.
I can tell you that much.
And you know
They are
what, and they
aware-
should be able to unplug. We
Yeah,
don't
I-
want to
I
bring them
don't,
back to
yeah.
answer this question. They should be able
Yeah.
to enjoy their rest.
And I'm not saying the board can't ask you, I'm just trying to give you a professional response of what kind of, you know, what you're gonna, engagement probably you're going to get. I mean, just based on past experience of trying to do things from summer as far as getting engagement. It's just really hard for people with vacations and time and things they've got to show up at a 5 o'clock or a noon meeting or whatever, you know. It just, unfortunately, you struggle to get feedback during this time. I just wanna, you know, throw that out there, and what that means is what that means, and, you know.
How long have the high schools been doing their, put it in an envelope or put it in a shoe?
It's been quite a while, I think maybe 2017-ish.
Well, we haven't been doing the envelopes. This year was the first year we collected them. I would say we came back from COVID and realized, I mean, it's all over. I mean, I really appreciate that the board is willing to sort of think about this as a school system. What do we want this to look like? Because it is, you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it wasn't the way it is now. I mean,
To be clear, you're using the pouches this year, Joe, you don't have pouches,
year,
am I
yeah.
correct?
No, some of our classrooms choose to use
Right,
them. We
so
don't-
we're-
So
we
we're
don't
not
do it.
consistent
consistent
in that
across the
way.
district.
Yep.
You know,
And part of that was the
Practice.
frustration from our teachers that, gosh, we tell them it's out of sight during instructional time, but they do that. Like and then they go to the bathroom for 30 minutes, and then
Yeah.
we get all the Snapchat images that were posted during second hour, you know, like.
So I think it's clear that it's a problem, and I think everybody agrees on that. So that's like the best thing here so
Yeah.
far. But I think, and I love the idea of having an informed choice about this, because all of those people do need to be part of that conversation, including the students, right? And so, how do we do that effectively? And is a link possible?
absolutely. And all those things are
Somebody
kind of
like we did
possible.
with the bond issue.
But that's where I'm kind of telling you, need some direction, but, and just understand the reality of where we're at timing. That's all I'm giving the board. You're gonna do what you guys want to do. I'm
Right.
just kind of giving you those things to think about, you know, that will be challenges as we go through this over the next 2 months, if that's the case.
Definitely need to then
Like a
put it
survey
on.
link of some kind?
Yeah, discussion for the July 10. And I think too, there's gonna have to be some more information imparted to us with teacher input, secondary, elementary administration.
And this is kind of what, like, you know, the board want survey, you know, do they, do you want just an open-ended, thing? You know, like I said, that's kind of the discussion element that I think we're going to need. And, like I said, just know that results are gonna be not as robust as you'd hope in the summer. That's all I'm just kind of,
Exactly.
saying from that point.
And I think too, it's not gonna look the same, the policy won't look the same at the elementary level as it will at the middle school level. as
And
it will
again,
at
that's
high
the
school
purview
level.
of the board, take a look at it and
Yeah.
think through with all this.
Well, one thing is, if we do put a policy out, they can react to either what you have without any changes, which I think puts us in a static position, or else you can make some changes for the beginning of the next school year and then have the reaction to that. You may have to go back and adjust the cell phone policy even after we think we've got it final, because the reality of making it happen will always tell you more than trying to think of how it's going to totally work.
I would feel more comfortable with gathering as much information before we change a policy. This is just my opinion. Gathering as much information as we can, because I'm not one to just want to kind of blow in the wind with a policy change and then parents reacting and then we change again. I'd rather gather as much information on the front as we can and make the right decision for our kids and then support our administrators in upholding that policy and not just kind of twitching and blowing.
Right, and comparing this back to what we just did with the cap and gown, I think there's a difference, a distinction. The cap and gown situation happens once a year. Sometimes, maybe twice a year. Is it once, just once? Whereas the cell phone issue is an everyday,
It's ongoing.
pervasive issue that not only deals with instructional value, administrative and staff work, but also
Life.
the mental health of kids, you know, and disciplinary issues. I mean, there's so much that's rolled into it, so it does deserve a longer look.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be real interesting. Hopefully, it's Forest Hills responds before the board meeting.
I will,
hope.
yep, I will
Yeah.
do my best. I think hearing from administrators on the implementation part of this, like what did this look like? How far in advance did they implement the policy? You know, how much leeway do they give families in terms of communicating? All of those things, I think would be really important as part of this equation
Yeah.
of making a change. So, yes.
And there might be some more innovative, creative thinking around this too that, I mean, we have world-class administrators.
And we're going to give you everything we can gather
So,
and
you
got.
know.
Just, understand that there's going to be a level of direction that we're going to
Right,
need
it is the summer.
based on that conversation you just had. Where's the whole board with that and timing and all that, so.
My wonder would be, are we, as the board more concerned currently about how it's affecting academics or how it's affecting mental health? That's both. So I think, Heidi probably can pull some data, and maybe that's gonna be data you're gonna talk about as student achievement data, to see, is it affecting, right? Could we compare it to some of our?
I don't know, though. I don't know if you can have causal
Right.
effect necessarily with that,
Right,
Just associative.
Well, some of the slides here said those.
Yeah,
used-
from national data, but as far as any kind of localized data, I just don't know you could have that causal,
You couldn't rule out per se the cause and effect.
especially
but-
with COVID and everything that's happened.
Yeah.
But the Surgeon General's report actually is pretty strong. The evidence in the back of that is very strong. So I think that they've done an awful lot of the work. They just haven't done it at TCAPS.
Right.
Well, and it would be good to get information just in Michigan in general, right? So that maybe it's too early for those stats. We'll see what
Don't
happens,
know.
but.
We'll dig
yeah.
up everything we can
Yeah.
and feed you everything we can on it. But like I said, just know direction. I mean, this is where we've gone so far. We've gathered a lot to try and have this for you here relatively quickly. And just we'll need direction, what you guys want and kind of timing and those kind of things. So.
It'd be interesting to see, Beth, because you mentioned the state legislators considering a policy where they're getting their
Massachusetts.
information from. Oh, are they doing it in Michigan
No.
or just
No,
Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
That's
All
where
right.
I saw it, yeah. So, but Massachusetts is a fairly respected educational bastion.
Sure.
Yeah, I would just add too, if you take time in the fall to get input from teachers, you will get some ideas we haven't thought of. The procedures we use now in the high schools, the pockets, the envelopes, that kind of stuff, it all came from teachers. I asked, the state principals conference is going on right now at the Grand Traverse Resort, so I asked a few other principals of bigger schools, some of them are on that list there, about what they do with it right now, and they ask us what we do with it, and just like that envelope idea, they're like, oh, we should do that. Like, we should definitely do that. Like, it's not things that we always think of in the moment. So having that opportunity to share ideas is good. But I would also point out, like, if we wait till we're back in school and we actually survey the kids at all three levels, don't think that kids will just say, I want access to my phone all day, every day. Because one thing I remember from when we made that initial shift at the high schools, which for us was a number of years before COVID, the student feedback was interesting. Like, they felt a lot better, and we were probably better at it as a school before COVID, but they felt a lot better putting their phone away for the hour knowing everybody else had to as well. Like, they don't have that fear of missing out syndrome
Right.
when they know everybody
Or
else
that-
puts it away.
Or that fear of making a mistake, and then before they go to lunch, 100 kids know that
Knowing
they
about
said
it.
the wrong,
Yeah.
right? You know, and
Yeah.
it was interesting. It was very like, oh, kids saying, I feel safer and I can take risks in the classroom and give responses and not be afraid that someone is gonna
Yeah.
make fun of me, and then it gonna go across the school in 3 seconds, so.
So I'm just saying, in addition to national data or state data, there might be some really good information from TCAPS kids that helps back up making a change and what change to make. You know, if we ask kids comprehensively.
And I love the relational piece of it because I know, speaking from experience with a child who was in emotional crisis last year, I got a bazillion calls from school from the kid sitting in the bathroom. And my first response was, have you talked to your counselor yet? Okay, if you haven't talked to your counselor, what are you doing sitting here with me?
Yeah.
Go see the counselor. And that at least alerted them that something was going on. And that was like my first thought was go to the counselor's office right now.
Who's right there?
Right, well, they were across the way, but still, that was, as a responsible parent, I think it was easier for me to say, put down your phone and go over here. And now if he hadn't had the phone option during class time, he probably would have just gone to the counselor's office.
Good point. Good point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything
More to
else?
come.
And actually, in time, what I'd like us to do is I'd like our board basically to put on sort of like a community educational time for community members, so that you have your counselors and your prosecutors, very much like what they were doing in Leelanau.
And we've got one scheduled.
Is
for
it scheduled?
cybersecurity. Yeah, it is. When did Evan have that? You guys remember? I want to say in September when we come back. They've got that.
And we've done some nights, like during parent-teacher conferences, our counselors have run sessions for parents to come about anxiety, depression, and about cell phone use and social media. We did one session that just taught parents about what some of the different apps did and what some of the different,
Yes.
because my kid can work my cell phone better. She can open my phone with her face. I don't even understand how that's possible, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they're just so good at it, right? And so.
Well, they've grown up with it. They've had it since the beginning. We haven't.
Right, so.
And their brains have been molded by it, and mine hasn't, or something like that.
Gotcha. Okay, move that to discussion for July 10. All right. Next is the Compass Strategic Plan update.
Yeah, so we are going to give you an update on Phase 1. These are the areas for the curriculum and instruction team, and so we're going to just kind of give you a high-level overview of the progress made to date. Go ahead.
Okay.
And the team's going to take different slides based on their area of implementation.
Great, and I'm up for the first slide. And so this one really, just to orient you to the slide, on the right-hand side, you'll see Goal 1A is continuous improvement of academic achievement and maximizing student success, and the objective one is at the top. You'll see develop systems to support curriculum mapping, common assessment, pacing guides, enrichment, and intervention support. So what we tried to do is cross-reference and do a crosswalk between where our work was this year and the things we were able to accomplish by objectives. So under this one, you'll see we developed an overview of all content areas to post to the website, which gave parents access and the public access to see our one-pagers,
Thanks, you guys.
as well as our scope and sequence. Second area was we really revisited our inventory, our balanced assessment system, and looked at how we are actually creating and developing assessments across K-12 and looking at what we're using, whether it's local, nationally normed, or state assessments, and what those summative and formative and benchmark assessments look like. We are actually still in the process of revisiting for next year, looking at some additional diagnostic tools for special education to look at benchmarking. Next area was really developing that K-5 building data review schedule, and that goes hand in hand with the one you see on the right, which is that data protocol process. Got data, now what? This really has, they've done, the coaches in particular and the elementary schools have done a wonderful job of really implementing a consistent process to looking at the data points to look for ways to improve student success and look at those tier 2 intervention supports. So that is the work under goal 1A, objective 1. Second objective, again, still under goal 1, is adopt and align, communicate to stakeholders, portrait of the graduate framework. You've heard quite a bit about this, so you should be pretty familiar with this. But really, we refined it and finalized what those common characteristics look like. Again, it was really the development and input from the community, various stakeholders, administrators, teachers, students, to actually have that developed. Our next steps next year are then to look at those I CAN statements that you saw in the last one and just do that final overview of that before those are starting to look at being established within, within those grade levels. And this is you. You are next. Turning it over to Kirsten.
So the next objective is really specific to the idea of increasing emotional health and social well-being across our district. There are a number of ways in which we're attempting to do that. Knowing that mental health is something that is on the forefront of really everyone's mind, particularly coming out of COVID, but just in general. We now are very familiar with the idea that students have to come into the learning environment in a place where they are regulated and available for learning in order for that to take place. So our goal is really to look at how do we work with our community partners to increase the amount of emphasis on emotional and social health. And also to really look at developing a very consistent model for our social workers and our mental health specialists across our district. So the idea would be that we want to make sure that anyone who's working with kids in that regard has a consistent methodology and approach to supporting kids. And I think we've done some really good work in both of those areas and are making some really nice gains. The next thing that we are looking at is related to the idea of prevention and response of harassment and bullying. So across the district, this has been the first year where Second Step has been fully implemented at K-5. Second Step is a social and emotional learning curriculum that focuses on those core competencies related to social and emotional well-being. There's also the Positivity Project that's implemented at grades 6-8. And then restorative practices is really going to continue to be the work of our district across the next few years, really trying to shore that up at a K-12 level as both a preventative and a responsive way of working with kids when we're dealing with harassment and bullying.
And this is me. So our goal was to increase education and support to ensure a safe, inclusive learning environment. So we did not have a culture and climate team across the district with representation from every building. We do now with a clear purpose and really looking at the perception data across the district. So we did that by building and then looked at it across the district. And the two areas of focus were around respect from student to student, staff to student, and student to staff. And then what we did was we created some action items based on the perception survey and also reviewed some equity surveys from other districts about what kind of data we want to have in our perception survey. There was not enough information there. We wanted more data and information from students. And so there'll be some recommendations on that and also on our action items that are now in 3 subcommittees from our group, which is a student voice group, professional learning, which will work hand in hand with the professional learning team from the district in terms of recommendations of professional learning on positive culture and climate, and community partnership. So a lot of the work you'll see kind of intertwined between the different district teams. We were also looking at the superintendent's board advisory that is going to have representation from students across the 6-12 landscape. To give voice to
8-12 actually.
8-12, starting in the fall. And so there's a process from one of our, again, comparison districts that we will be implementing this fall, getting student voice into this important topic.
And I would just say, just as a follow-up, I think we have representation at this point, Kristen, from every single building on the culture and climate team. I think we have a total of 24 members across the district who wanted to be a part of this team. So it's a good team to be able to work with.
And part of that work has been just visiting other identifying some gold standard districts across that have really strong K-12 positive culture and climate. So we've sent people to some conferences, we've sent people to visit some other districts, we've done some kind of informal phone calls to these districts about how they're implementing it, what's the sustainability of this, what does it look like, and just getting some tools and resources to really dive in this year. Like I said, the strategic plan came out in the fall, and we didn't even get this team up and running until, I think we had some team members, December was our first meeting, December? So the fact that we were able to get as much done as we did this year, just even getting the team established, having a clear mission and vision for the team, looking at data, reviewing other districts, looking at equity surveys, and we only met once a month. Now that we'll be breaking up into subcommittees, we should be able to get, more momentum, I guess, going with the work. So we're really excited about that.
Do you have any BIPOC people on this team?
We do.
Uh,
He left the district, didn't he?
We had one person who, unfortunately, he left the district. We do have another student. We also have Summer Baldwin
Yes.
from,
Who's new?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have members of the LGBTQ community on the team?
I
Can't
couldn't tell you right
say
off the
for sure.
bat.
People of differing abilities?
I think I would represent from a special ed lens that ability portion, for sure.
I would like to see
What?
more
yeah.
representation.
So would
if
we.
Absolutely,
don't.
absolutely.
So if you need recommendations
Yes.
or anything.
This is all internal staff.
Only
Okay, I
internal,
get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So-
we've tried to recruit as many
Every
people.
month we have new people joining the
Yep.
group, just reaching out. We've asked for that from the group to invite someone, again.
And
we
this
need-
is
we need more
just-
diversity.
Yeah, this is just TCAPS, it's not Northwest
Correct.
Ed.
No,
Correct.
just our district. Yep.
And the exciting thing is the more people hear about the committees and we report out in the In Focus, the more response we get for the different committees.
For our student superintendent and board advisor group, we will have an application process that we want to ensure. I have a good video I need to send you guys. I haven't sent you, I've sent the executive team of what Portage did that I think is really powerful, so.
Thank you.
And you want to make sure it's representative truly across the whole school, right? So you don't get disproportionately any one particular group. The whole thing will be very proportional across.
It's a goal,
The whole
remember, you're looking at
student body.
volunteers, so you don't get exactly to be able to say,
But.
all
roughly.
that, but it's your goal to have as much representation from different groups as possible.
Okay, so the next objective is also related again to some of the issues surrounding students that are exhibiting challenging behavior, which we know is something that it has been increasing over the past few years. So again, one of the things that we're really proud of the work this year is that all of our buildings have developed a comprehensive PBIS system, and that stands for Positive Behavior Intervention and Support. We looked at MDE's model and have done a fidelity check with our buildings to make sure that all of the key components need to be in place. And in essence, what that really is helping buildings define their common values, what they are hoping to support kids in terms of the pro-social behavior that they'd like to see. How are they reinforcing that behavior in both an affirming and corrective way? So when you see kids doing exactly what you want them to be doing, how are you supporting them? When you see kids that are kind of blowing it, how are you supporting them? And really capitalizing on the idea again that it does look at a system-wide approach to supporting and addressing the way that students are interacting with each other, with the teacher, even with the content on occasion. So our buildings have been working very hard to develop a comprehensive plan, and we're ready for full implementation beginning next fall.
Appreciate the supporting verbiage in that.
I'm sorry, the.
Supporting, using
Yep,
the term.
absolutely.
Concept supporting.
So that, you know, the idea is, I think, what we know to be true is that learning involves all domains of human development. And so we should expect that kids are going to struggle with certain skills, just like they struggle with certain academic skills, and that it is just as much part of our job to help shape and support that behavior as it is helping kids crack the code of reading. So this is really looking at that from that systemic lens and really saying, what are we doing across the board as a district and at a building level to make sure we have those supports in place so that kids can be as successful as they can.
Okay, and the last one is Objective 1, Goal 1E, and that is develop and implement a plan to support the needs of all learners through expansion of opportunities, and in particular, developing innovative programming opportunities K-12 and increasing number of innovative programming opportunities K-12 for students addressing those with diverse learners. So some of the things we've worked on this year, Portrait of the Graduate came directly out of the innovation piece, communities and pathways that you see at the high school for, you know, helping students have a connection to areas of interest that they want to go into or pursue further and feel like they really have a community within a large school. The development of partnerships with Michigan Tech, Grand Valley State, and CMU, looking at different ways for students to be able to earn credit in college while they're still participating in high school. The majority of our credit in the past has been through NMC, but we're exploring opportunities to expand that. We have working on a partnership with Munson to really expand how we actually are working together with TCAPS and with Munson, not only with internships and externships or job shadows, but also with how can we actually develop almost a pipeline basically for them, for those boomerang students that, or boomerang kids that want to eventually come back to Traverse City. Working on a innovative program with Traverse City High School and NMC that we started prior to COVID and bringing that back to life, giving Traverse City High School students an opportunity to spend time on campus, earn credit at NMC prior to graduation. Our peer-to-peer program at the high school, I would also consider part of this process for, on the mental health side, for mental health and well-being for our students, the peer-to-peer programs we implemented at the high school this year. And the last thing on the list I have, and there are more, but these are the highlights, are that athletic training program that will start next year, an hour each on east and west side. So looking at ways to address and allow more students with diverse needs, different ways to engage in innovative programming, and helping to start thinking about programming in different ways, whether it's competency-based, education, and looking for ways for students to be able to, you know, you hear about stacking credentials and things like that. So just like, that's like down the road, but starting to think about innovative ways where we're meeting the needs of all students and not just in one way.
About tie and
Yes, we have the TIE program as well. So that TIE program is a 2-hour block program that brings teachers together to work in a community for students to be able to then take an integrated experience between ELA and social studies, I believe is what the program is. So
Is TIE an acronym for something?
it was Trojan
Trojan
Interactive Experience, and then we'll
Integrated.
have it at West next year.
yeah.
It'll expand, and then also the math.
Oh, yes, and that you'll hear about in the next slide.
Okay.
So you'll hear a little bit about amped algebra and some of the geometry and construction things, a little bit more on our innovations that are happening to support all learners. And you'll see not just high learners, low learners, people that, you know, everyone in between. So how are we supporting each and every student within TCAPS?
Okay.
And that is it.
All right.
So, you know, the board will see, in each committee will see elements, so the board collectively will see the entire strategic plan. And that way, when it gets to time with me, that the board will have seen all of it through all the committees, and so then can ask any questions.
And that is linked in, if you want to take a look, that goal sheet that really provides, we've really been working hard to not only show the goal on that goal sheet, but then to provide what is the evidence that supports that has taken place within those goals.
And that document is public, correct?
It's all on the website.
And updated, yep.
And you can click the slide too. The one with the goals on it, you can click it, it'll take you to it.
Right, great, thank you.
I'll have to play.
All right, thank you for that update. Moving on to the professional development calendar.
So, what we'd just like to share out is a little bit of the work that's been done by our professional learning team. Heidi and I are chairing that team this year and moving forward. One of the things that is really true, I think, when you're working with staff is that time is precious, and time in front of staff, that is like the best real estate. You know, think of the boardwalk in Monopoly. That's what this is like. Everyone is trying to vie for the same short window that you have opportunities to be in front of staff and push out messaging. So the professional learning team has really been thinking very strategically, because we have such limited access to staff. How do we capitalize on that? What do we say yes to? Kristen always says, what do we say yes to and what do we say no to? How do we keep what is important, or the main thing? Because everything is so important when we're talking about school, right? So what we have done, and if you want to click on the draft calendar, we spent some time really working with this team and trying to say, what are the opportunities that we have, the touch points that we have with staff? So we know we have time at the very beginning of the year, that is usually 2 days of solid professional development. What do we want those days to look like? And how do we make sure that we're setting the stage with all staff to say, this is what is going to be the main thing this year? And then we went through and looked at what are the PLC or DPPD opportunities, that stands for District Provided Professional Development, and what do we want that to look like? So we really focused on what we're calling the Big Five, which is really looking at explicit instruction at a K-8 level. At the high school level, their instructional lens is going to be looking at engagement strategies and working with cognitively complex tasks. Both of those things really have a lot of overlay when we looked at Marzano and we looked at Hattie, and we wanted to really focus on high yield instructional strategies that matter and keep those the focal point throughout our school year. So what this just shows is sort of the mapping out. If you're an elementary teacher, if you're a middle school teacher, if you're a high school teacher, what happens if you're a counselor or a social worker? What can you anticipate will be the training, and where will that take place? Knowing that, of course, we might have to do some adjusting as the year goes by. But that was really the bulk of the work of that team, was just trying to flush this out for our major staff groups.
And identifying implementation phases. So like, where are we at in implementation, whether it's, we're just exploring it, it's basically exploring whether or not that should be something that goes on the plate or the docket for us to continue forward, but looking at what year we are in for implementation, and if it's a initial year implementation or full implementation. So mapping those out. John, you had
And to give the board an idea, we get 5 days all year with teachers.
It's not enough.
5 days.
It's not enough.
That's 6 hours in a day.
Not
That's
enough.
what we get.
And these are required for staff to.
And these are split between like what the building principals have to get done with their staff at the beginning of the year and what we hope to set the stage as far as district focus, right? So it's not a lot of time, so it's a little bit of speed dating in some cases, right?
And that's mixed between what's state mandated for us to do and contractually what we have negotiated. It has to be negotiated. So that's what we have to maximize is, think boardwalk, and, I'd even go Park Place.
Yeah, it
You know,
could
at
be the
this
Park
point,
Place,
it's gold just every minute, so we've got to maximize it. And this will probably be mentioned, but I think this is really important, that for the first time since I know I've been here, as we have teachers now a part of this group that helps make the decision on what we do. And that is very valuable to have that teacher voice and everybody at the table to plan every single one of these. We did not have anything near this when I walked in, just so everybody is understanding of how far we've come with this work.
I just want to publicly thank the two of you for this work. This is probably the hardest committee, I think, because we had so many initiatives and buildings, and we have said no to things, to say yes to other things, or no, not yet to things, just so that we can make sure that we have alignment to the strategic plan. There's a clear process and plan, it's sustainable, and we have buy-in from the stakeholders closest to the work. So thank you.
Welcome.
Yep. It is certainly, when you look at the caliber of administrators that we have in our district, getting everyone to agree to the way in which we want to row the boat actually in and of itself can be challenging, right? So even being able to say, hey, what is it that we want to make sure that we are ensuring all staff have exposure to and training on, that conversation alone can take months. So
And to make sure, your principals are prepared.
Yes.
And they're not getting things secondhand and they're ready to go with the staff, right? They're some of the best leaders we have in the district, and how are we making sure they're prepped to actually support the work district-wide? So really figuring out all the nuances between central office all the way down to certified staff to non-certified staff, and figuring out where we need support so we can have the biggest impact.
Lots of logistics.
Lots of logistics.
You're like the ultimate party planners.
Yep.
It's true.
That's right. It's
It's-
such a fun
The only
committee.
problem
I
is
like
the
that.
canopy
You say
doesn't
that.
allow us to buy food or water.
Yeah,
for it, so,
No flowers.
so.
Not much of a-
it's not
not
all
much
that,
Not much of a party.
right.
And
Lots of content,
and
not a lot of
so-
fluff.
Yes. And so speaking of that, Megan, if you go back to the other presentation.
Maybe I should have said wedding planners, but
There we
without all the flowers.
So that speaks to, really the forethought in planning. Whoops, I can go back, I think. There we go. The forethought and planning of how do we actually fit all that in and help people get where they need to be before the start of the school year. And so this year we really pushed hard on how are we offering opportunities for people to opt into as they see fit, and really allow principals, staff to get trained during the summer. So you'll see here a list. We have instructional rounds, June 15th. Right after school got out, we had the original facilitators and the secondary principals come together and just have a conversation about where did we start with instructional rounds, because it started, Flournoy, you may remember, many, many years ago, and now it was something that was on the list when we inventoried to principals that they thought was very important, and teachers, right? What was very important and had impact that we stopped doing, that had data to support, that we should actually bring back, and this was top of the list.
I was wondering about that because I knew it had gone away, so I'm glad to
Yes.
This is
see
the
it
work of
back.
the Harvard instructional rounds.
Yes.
Toby did a lot of work with others,
Yeah,
so yeah.
and so near and dear to my heart, we did it in Farmington, they do it up here. And so on the 23rd, we'll have another kickoff with principals. The majority will be elementary there. We have our Plan B because secondary has open houses there. So we make sure we hit all the principals prior to that launch of the school year, knowing that instructional rounds, it's a slow roll, it's not fast. So as you choose to opt in for that first year, if you want to hop on board, you can. And then next year will be the initial, and that last year will be full implementation for instructional rounds. The second thing we were able to offer from the Buck Institute is project-based learning. PBL stands for project-based learning from PBL Works. That finished last Wednesday. It was Monday through Wednesday. And we had about 24 staff members participate in that project-based learning. The great thing about that was it not only talks about gold standards, because when you talk about project-based learning, people think if you do a project, that's project-based learning. And there's so much more to it than that. There's really those 3P, project-based, place-based. How are you actually bringing all those pieces together? And then giving the teachers time to actually plan those lessons to make sure they're making those critical connections, which was huge. Very positive feedback from that last week. Today, we had our first day of Amped Algebra going on in Sault Ste. Marie, and we had 6 high school staff members, math, special ed, and CTE teachers, career and technical education teachers, up there for training in the Sioux to learn about Amped Algebra. The Amped Algebra program is really designed around having an hour of math for students who tend to struggle, and also that hands-on experience of how you're doing the manufacturing and business side, actually, of how that ties into algebra. And so making those connections, The data is reporting so far back out that when those happen, between that combination, scores tend to increase by quite a bit for students in their understanding of algebra on state test.
I love the name of it, I think that.
Yes.
And then the other part is
follow-up.
geometry. Go
Yep.
ahead.
The follow-up to that is geometry and construction, which hopefully that will be our next round next summer, and getting into what geometry and construction looks like. So have the math foundational theory piece with that hands-on application piece, and giving students the opportunity to make those connections as they see how it works. Pre-AP readiness workshop on August 7th. You may have heard us talk a little bit about pre-AP. We had quite a good conversation this year on our honors program and developing really a flow chart on how to make good selection choices for students entering into honors. And then also looking at what pre-AP readiness training may look like at the middle school. And so pre-AP is designed around preparing students for, as they go through middle school and into really freshman year in high school, preparing them with the context and instructional framework of AP that will allow them to be more successful, and also build confidence in students that wouldn't normally take an AP class by exposing to that to them early and often. It's designed actually around, like, every kid in middle school should actually be exposed to pre-AP. So it's a interesting philosophy behind it. John and I were able to go and visit Northview, is that right? Northview?
By Grand Rapids.
By Grand Rapids High School, maybe, I don't know, when was that, April?
Yeah.
So we got a good understanding of how they incorporated it there, and now we're actually looking in to see how this could have benefit to our students here. We also have two math teachers going to the AP training for Trig and Pre-Calc. That would be a new offering for next year for our AP courses. And then we have Bill Boyle coming back for restorative practice circles on August 17th and 18th with coaches, principals, and social workers. So we have a packed summer, which took a lot of prior planning to offer opportunities, and we are really extremely happy about the amount of staff that's signed up to participate in these learning opportunities. So very exciting. It goes into that professional learning calendar and how we bring all those pieces together to offer programming throughout the year. Instead of like a one-stop in those 5 days, how are we finding opportunities to offer opportunities for staff? And that is all I have we have, unless you have something to add.
That's a busy calendar, and it is exciting to know that our teachers want to continue their development to help our kids. So, I mean, that speaks highly of our staff, administrators,
And they have
and
their
all you
voice
guys.
in it, voice makes a difference.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Anything? Okay. Thank you for the calendar update. Moving on to curriculum instruction year-end celebrations.
Usually we are talking about around the district, but we took a chance in a minute to ask our administrators and our team what we were most proud of in terms of the work this year. So this is actually a word display. Principals got to put in their 2 to 3 words of the things they were most proud of in terms of all the things that have happened this year. Collaboration was and staff was the number one, like systems, growth, teamwork, all those things in the middle. The larger words were the things that were said over and over again or were said the most.
Contracts are done, federal contracts.
Especially I don't know if Ben Berger actually put his
I
name in
know.
or somebody put his name in for him.
Several times, Ben Berger, Burger Full
The last day of
Fam.
school. The last
Amazing
day of school.
shake at the.
The Traverse
That
Heights.
is, that is the Student of the Year award at Traverse Heights Elementary.
So
Okay.
cool.
They do a
It's a program
handshake.
called the Amazing Shake.
Oh, thanks.
So I and Richard Lewis, the mayor, got to interview the kids, the final 2, and interview them and choose one, so.
Oh, cute. That's cool.
Look at that. So really exciting. I think just the fact that we've come together and put some really good systems in place and have involved a lot of stakeholders in the decision-making in terms of these district teams
How many
and
burgers are
with our
in here? There's
It's
like
the same, well,
Or
something,
2
what,
technically.
there's 2.
And they
Second
both
year.
finished the last
Yeah.
day, and then she had the baby.
There's
So,
Townsburger, Baby Burger,
They,
Burger.
I'm guessing somebody on Ben
Yes, I
Berger's
think
team
yes.
might have
Yeah, they might have
really
put
put his
excited
name
about
down
that
a few
baby.
times.
I mean, she did finish a whole day of teaching.
She finished the
A
day of teaching
and
and
then
had the
it
baby that evening.
last day of school.
They finished the school year, and then bam.
That's what we like.
Yep, just like that. Dedicated.
That's right.
Timing was perfect.
So this is in the slide deck, you can check it out. So the next few slides are just some of the celebrations that our own team went through last week. And these are things that are outside, they're really, I guess, systems things that we had to put in place to even start addressing some of the strategic plan focus. So our student parent handbook hasn't been revised in the way that, I'm gonna give a shout out to Kelly Walter, our amazing AA, who put this in a Google Doc, redid the entire structure just so that we could allow more feedback from our principals to weigh in on this, make sure that all of our board policies that have changed were added. She has gotten some amazing reviews from the principals and our team on just how organized it is, how much more sense it makes for parents and families. And it, again, just allows a lot more comment and feedback on that, so thank you to Kelly. Cross-training within the department, so we have done just some, I guess, redundancy so that we have student discipline hearings, special education support, and collaboration with our student support network, so that within our team, we know more about what is going on in each of those areas. So if one of us has to fill in any given area, we have some capacity to do that, because on any given day, our schedules may be set for us, and then just like a classroom teacher or principal, they often change for whatever reason. And so we wanted to make sure, especially in these important areas, that we had cross-training within the department. We've heard about them, these district teams were not established last fall, so between September and December, we established these teams after we looked at the strategic plan, created a clear purpose for each of them so that we could make sure to stick true to that purpose. Elicited volunteers from across the district with the goal of having a representative from every building on each of the teams, and I would say we're 95% there with representation from across the district on every one of those teams that you've just heard about today. The other thing was just really thinking about all of our calendar and aligning the times. That is like a Rubik's Cube, trying to get district meetings for principals, our team, all the district teams we just talked about, our executive team, our cabinet team. And so we put together a team's calendar, and for the first time had all of our administrators weigh in on this, and so that we could get true alignment with meetings, so that we could get the first of all, are we meeting the right amount of frequency that we did this year? And secondly, to try to avoid just inconsistencies with days. So for instance, our secondary principals always meet at the same time every month, so that they could know there was a cadence to that. So that was really powerful, and I've got kind of a structure set for that for this year, with all of the meetings for next year already established on people's calendars. We also focused on the speed of trust behaviors and have seen just some positive momentum with principals. So some of the speed of trust behaviors are things like creating transparency, demonstrating respect, righting wrongs. And we have now seen a really just positive momentum with principals, again, getting their feedback and talking about the system that Dr. Van Wagner often says. We've been a district of schools, and we really are focusing on being a school district. And principals are starting to buy into that, and they see the positive momentum with the fact that we're kind of all, as Kirsten mentioned, rowing in the same direction. Also think just the interactions with the TCA leadership has allowed us to have this 3-year contract extension, just those ongoing conversations that we've had with them, and the positive interactions both from Kirsten and Summer with our tribal council, and just better serving our Indigenous students. And thank you to Summer and Kirsten for their work to really build some bridges there with those interactions. Very proud of that work too. Our junior kindergarten program development, that is another thing that we were really excited about, having that offering in every elementary building with some real intentionality around teacher feedback and alignment to the curriculum across the district, not just within the JK program, but across the vertical spectrum too, down through preschool and up to kindergarten. So really excited, and Kirsten and team with that work. And then the focus on special ed and 504. We didn't mention those directly today, but our special education, under the direction of Tiffany here, have gotten some guides for 504s, a specific Google site for teachers so that there's more understanding of what that means, creation of a handbook for new teachers and administrators, and onboarding for special education assistants. So hopefully streamlining just a lot of those systems and processes. And finally, the curricular reviews. We have a better aligned curriculum K-12 with these new adoptions. Some, it's been a very long time since we've had them, and some never. So this is really exciting, and the teachers are really excited about just being able to have a consistent curriculum that is aligned, again, K-12. And then just some of the policy and implementation systems that really were not on the radar at the beginning of the year, but we have looked at, and the board knows, the discipline and therapy animals policy, which has allowed us just to improve the process across the district for consistency and really just ensuring that we have the right liability insurance for both the dog handlers and for the school district. And yeah, an improvement of our discipline hearings too in terms of documentation and communication as well.
Well, it's very obvious that was one of your objectives, was more cohesiveness and
Yes.
consistency in our
Yes.
district of schools and school district, because the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, and everyone was doing it different.
And long ago, some of it by design,
Right.
Yeah.
you know, it's been amazing to learn the history of those things, you know. and-
Right.
And, but I struggle, every kid, no matter which school they're in, should get a world-class TCAPS education. And the same opportunities across the board. And that's our goal.
And I do think
And
there's
rise all
some
tides.
relief on the part of principals, just on the fact that we have said no to some things to say yes to other things. I mean, I think there's been some true relief from some of them, and when we've made those tough decisions.
It's a lot of hard work because this is a big district.
Yeah, yeah, big ship to move, you know, and we're not, you know, perfectly there, but we've come a long ways.
Making good progress.
Yep.
All right, good, very good. Yeah, well, it's a great year. Thank you for everyone for all your hard work, and let's keep going.
It's almost July and summer, so.
Yes, it is. Exactly.
Wait, do you guys get a break ever? No, I
Anything
didn't
else?
think so. Not that I can think of. Thank you.
Beth, anything?
Thank you.
No. All right, thank you very much, everybody. I hope you
Yeah.
make time for family, cookouts, have some fun. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.